Thank you very much. So we are very happy to welcome all of you to our press briefing room today with the President of the General Assembly and the Presidents of Croatia, Estonia, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Prime Minister of Iceland. We have interpretation in English and Spanish, as we have only 30 minutes today, we also would like to ask you to keep your questions to one at a time. We are also broadcasting through web TV, so if you would like to Facebook and post Facebook or Twitter, please bear in mind that our hashtag today is Women in Power, as you can see over there, and our Twitter accounts on UN Web TV, but also the PJ's account, which is UN_PJ. Now let's welcome our guests, the President of Croatia, Her Excellency, Ms. Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović. We also have the President of Estonia, Her Excellency, Ms. Kersti Kaljulaid. The President of the General Assembly, Her Excellency María Fernanda Espinosa. The Prime Minister of Iceland, Her Excellency Ms. Katrín Jakobsdóttir. And the President of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency Ms. Paula-Mae. I will now invite the PJ to deliver her opening remarks. Madam President, you have the floor.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Special acknowledgement to the presence of the Presidents and Prime Minister of Iceland. We are really honored and delighted to have them here in this house. We invited all female presidents and prime ministers, and we were able to gather them, 50% of them, which is a lot. So we need a better representation. You see a lot of me in this house, so I will not make any opening remarks nor a speech, just to tell you that the Women in Power event is in full swing, is happening now at the General Assembly. I have to tell you, I have never seen the General Assembly so full and for so long, and with long lists of speakers, so it means that we need more of that. We need more women in power coming to this house, sharing their experiences, mentoring the younger generations, to say out and loud that we do. Women in leadership, women in power, we do when we make the difference. It is not only about numbers. It is not only about saying that 90% of governments still have men as presidents or prime ministers, that only 24% of parliamentarians are female around the world. So we still need a lot to do. But the question here is when we are in positions of power and decision-making, how is that we make the difference? So that's why I am really privileged to welcome these very powerful women, two women in power, and I will give you the floor immediately to you to allow you to ask questions and interact with the presidents and the prime minister that are here. We could not all be here because some are still speaking at the General Assembly, but I think that there's a wonderful representation of visions, of regions, and of experiences as well. So I give back the floor to you, Monica, to allow you to have an exchange. Don't ask me questions because I'm here almost every day and you can talk to me anytime. So just take full advantage of the presence of these very powerful women.
Thank you very much, President Espinosa. The first question goes to Madam President of UNCA, Valeria Robeco. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be a woman as well. So this is a question for everyone that wants to answer it. How important is the contribution of political movements and parties to increase the number of women in leadership position? Thank you so much.
And the question goes to? Okay. Madam President, Estonia.
If you allow me,
go ahead.
I have a little secret to share with you. President of Croatia has to leave us earlier because she has an appointment with the Secretary General, so perhaps she can start.
Thank you very much. I apologize. It's very important to raise awareness, and the power of NGOs and movements is growing, especially with the growth of the social media. But of course, we as politicians need to do a lot more on the implementation of the legislation. I mentioned in my remarks in the General Assembly that we have almost perfect legislation when it comes to gender equality. However, it's implementation that's lacking. We have the quota system in the parliament. However, the parties, none of the parties respect it. And this last election actually showed that the number of elected women was the fewest ever since Croatia's independence. The parties will rather pay fines than respect the quota. But what's even worse is that the ombudsperson for gender equality cannot get the proper data from the parties that she's been asking for. So this is a very complex issue where we need to bypass a lot of initiatives that come from the other side that we see that truly would like to block women not just in politics, but in other areas of life as well. And this is why I said that this should not be an ideological issue, gender equality. It's a fundamental right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Kaljulaid.
Would you like first? Yes.
Well, I would like to add to that provided in your country that girls are educated and your school system is egalitarian enough that all girls from all social classes can be educated, provided that your civil society is free to act, and provided that you are ready to protect all those NGOs and all these activist groups who are ready to speak out, you can actually make great progress being yourself as a politician, more or less, supported by them, guaranteeing their ability and security to act and react and therefore change the society together. In Estonia, we have seen that the number of female members of parliament last week rose to 29, highest ever. And we see we make progress. We've never had quota systems because simply our parliaments have never before had more than 20% of women. And there has not been a consensus and a certain feeling of unease. So we have taken this road around the corner. We have been talking about universal healthcare and egalitarian education, and then talking about women being 50% of the population. By statistical analysis, you would think half of the good ideas will be in their heads, not because they are women, but they are half, simple as such. And now we see that with the more vocal support of the female rights groups, we have combined this moderate political approach together with the activism. Of course, price is activists are often ridiculized and they have to stand alone quite a lot. But we are slowly moving with this combination of the measures. So every society needs to find their ways, but you need to protect civil society and NGOs to make sure nobody is going to harm them because they speak out.
Thank you.
I don't think that Iceland would be where it is today without the radical movements of radical feminists that actually left office in 1975, that actually founded an all-women's party in the early 80s because the other political parties weren't reacting to the fact that there were hardly any women in politics and parliament. And then the other parties had to react. So I think what we have learned, for lessons learned in Iceland, is that all progress has been made through because of the efforts of radical grassroots movements who have even changed into political parties. But now, we actually also had a backlash in the last election. We were up to nearly 50-50 after the elections 2016. Then we had elections 2017, and it went down just below 40, the number of women in parliament. And that's because the political parties, they are responsible. My party has a quota system. The majority of Icelandic political parties has quota system, but not all of them. And you can actually see from the results of the election how it goes for women. So I think radical measures is what's needed unless we're going to stay here talking about gender inequality for the next century.
Thank you.
My position on this panel is perhaps unique in that I do not come from or represent a political party. In Trinidad and Tobago, the president is apolitical. Mm-hmm. And so I don't only speak for the people, but I speak to the people. And so that I have a perspective that perhaps can influence things differently from how things have been before. So that I'm the first female president of my country. We have had a female prime minister, however. As the first female president, there are many expectations placed upon me because we have a great sensitivity to the gender imbalance. On the face of it, it will appear to be equal because there is nothing that on the book stands in the way of female equality. We don't have a quota system. 30% of our parliamentarians are women. But I don't think we have been leveraging that number effectively enough. And really it falls to the president, NGOs and other active groups in our society to raise awareness, not only among men, but among women themselves, who can be their own worst enemy from time to time if they don't understand their own power and how it can be effectively used. So that is what our position is. So that someone had asked me earlier if I'm for the quota system. Yes. But until that time, women in homes, women who make up the vast majority of teachers, women who make up most of the members of NGOs need to be very aggressive and proactive about raising awareness and pushing relentlessly to bring some more equity to our situation.
Thank you very much. I'll try to strike a balance here. I have you, Ann. Masood, please go ahead, and then afterwards, Ann.
Thank you very much. My name is Masood Haider. I represent the Dawn newspaper of Pakistan, one country where the first female Muslim Prime Minister came from. Now, my question is on the unity of the all the females, gender, that in the last election for the Secretary General, there were like 4, 5, 6, what do you call, women standing in election, and yet they were all defeated by Mr. Guterres, who became the Secretary General. What is it that will take for all of you to get together to find one universal candidate for the Secretary Generalship of the United Nations? Thank you.
We will see about it in the future, but about this last election, I'm quite sure that, Secretary General was inclined to be a feminist before these elections, but having defeated so many women, and I think he acquired a certain and special responsibility. And right now, we are always ready to support his reform agenda, and we're quite sure that indeed next time again, the sisterhood will come together and try to promote both equality and also some of us to lead this organization. But this was not a waste of time, what Helen Clark and other ladies put in. They influenced the agenda. I'm quite sure they did.
Yeah.
Besides Helen Clark, there were so many other, the one from Czech Republic, the one from, so what happened? Why didn't you get together on one?
I was not here, I cannot answer.
Thank you, Masood. And Charles, please, you have a question. Go ahead.
And Charles Baltic Review. This question is for the President of Estonia. As the first woman and youngest president of Estonia, what can you tell us about your meeting with Ivanka Trump, your visit to the White House, and being listed in Forbes magazine as the world's 100 most powerful women?
Thank you.
It's actually always when I hear first female president and the youngest ever elected, I sense this youngest ever is a put down. I'm 10 years older than Emmanuel Macron. I'm 2 years older than the Polish president, Andrzej Duda. I'm the same age as Latvian president, Vejonis. I remember 2004, when I went through the European Parliament as a candidate for the membership of the Court of Auditors, I was asked twice about my age. There were two gentlemen who were a couple of years older than me, but they were men and nobody asked them about the age. So I don't like this remark which is always made. Sorry to say, I'm a grandmother. I'm not a chick, I'm a grandmother. And this says a little bit about the political class in general, that, it has been old people deciding for the future. It's changing, and I think it's technological change which is bringing this, because, technological cycle is so short now that even in politics we see that younger, be it men or women, are coming on the scene. This treatment, it's two-pronged. Yes, it's a prize, but on the other hand, it always sounds a little bit like criticism. And I have to say, male colleagues face the same when they are younger than average. But being a female president for me means that Estonian children in school and in kindergarten, they draw a president and sometimes, and then they draw a woman in the skirts. And it takes time for these things to change, but because first year I noticed when there was something in Estonian language and it needed to be translated, and it was about a president in general, and the Estonian language doesn't have he or she, we are neutral. And then the translation into English or French was always il or he. And this year we had a conference a couple of weeks ago, and there were children talking about, in principle, about a president, and the translation was she. And I realized that, I mean, we're starting to have this kind of impact on the societies, and I'm always ready to assume this responsibility that, I mean, at least these children will never ask this question. And being the first lady president, I mean, sorry, in our region, we were far behind because Finland has had 10 years of female presidency already long ago. Same for Latvia. In Lithuania, there is a 10-year period of presidency of Dalia Grybauskaite is just coming to the end. I'm born at the year when Golda Meir was actually the prime minister of Israel. So we should stop being astonished of first female presidents. Sorry.
Ibis, Prensa Latina.
Thank you all for being here. I'm going to ask you to... several women in the Caribbean have reached high governance positions. So, but what are the main challenges you must face in the region? Also apply for all of you. Thank you.
I think the greatest challenge for us in the Caribbean would be deeply entrenched cultural norms that we have not yet debunked. So that while women are moving ahead, they are moving ahead very slowly because the cultural norms which affect both men's and women's thinking keeps us from going as quickly as we can. So that, as I mentioned in the panel, we do not have a fair representation of women in the STEM fields. Girls have not been encouraged to take risks. They have not been encouraged to do science subjects. So that while there is access, there is no true equity or very little of it. We also have a situation where we do have in the public service equal work, equal pay for equal work, but we do not have sufficient facilities for childcare. So that women very often suffer along the line in their careers simply because the demands of taking care of children can take them away from the intensity that the men can easily apply to their jobs. So we have a number of cultural issues that affect us. And when I'm asked about whether or not I think we should have quota systems will go some way. But I think the first job for us is to deal with the cultural norms that are the hindrance to our progress.
Thank you. Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Excellencies, for your important presence here. My name is Abadi from Le Dossier paper. My question is directed to President Espinosa. Secretary General Guterres said yesterday, gender equality is fundamentally a question of power. And you did say that women should be in power. Do you think the Security Council is representative of women as far as the power is concerned? What should be done to improve the situation in the Council?
Well, we all know that the reform of the Security Council is an ongoing process for 25 years, that we have a mandate to reform the Council and its working methods for 10 years now. It's a very contentious issue. We've addressed the issue over and over again. And because of the dynamics and the working methods of the Council, there is a rotation in presidencies every month. And I think that we should, really look at what are the differences when women, preside over the Council and make the differences in leadership. What we try to do with these women in power is precisely to take the phrase of Secretary General that to say that gender equality is an issue of power and bring the voices of powerful women to the House and to talk to younger generations to show that it is possible that women in power can make the difference, and it's not only about numbers and fairness. It is about transforming the world and making and building better societies.
President Kaljulaid.
Well, as a country which is a candidate for Security Council in a contested position, I cannot resist telling all ambassadors in this house, vote for us, we have a female president.
Evelyn? Evelyn, go ahead. Evelyn, do you have a question? Yes. Okay, and afterwards, our colleague over there. Yeah, I have you, Satu.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a pushback that you've all seen, in not only your countries, but on the document that you're going to vote for and approve or by consensus. Do you see in the end of this forum of your holding on to what has been gained in the past, or do you see a lot of weakening of some of the key measures?
I think it's actually a very important moment that we will not see a backlash in what we will agree on here at this summit. And of course, we know what the controversies are, but I think at this moment it's so important that those of us who really wish to see progress in gender equality will show solidarity and ensure that there won't be a backlash. And I also think it's important that we remind ourselves that this is not about conservatism against progress. It's about real reactionary views on the liberties of humans. And then I'm talking about women. And then I'm especially referring to sexual and reproductive health and rights, which is a fundament for all women, something that we began talking about in the 30s in Iceland. And it's about the freedom to be able to love and to have control over your life. And it's such a fundamental right that should be ensured to all women and men. So I have a hope that we won't see any backlash, but I think it's very important that we show strength and solidarity to ensure that.
Ukrainian News Agency. And then I have you,
Hello,
Shana and
Ukrainian News Agency, George Tichy. First of all, it's great to see you here. It's absolutely fantastic. And my question is regarding Ukraine. As for 5 years already, the Russian war on the country lasts. There are hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of women who are affected by war. And just two of them were yesterday in the United Nations headquarters. It's Natalia Mokriak and Olga Oprysko. One has son who is actually in Moscow now detained, and the other has father who is there. There are two of those 24 Ukrainian Navy sailors who are there. And I wonder if you have a message to all of those women who are affected by war, and especially for Olga and Natalia. Thanks.
Madam President.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, we need to call the spade a spade. There is war in Europe, and we tend to overlook that in a well-developed Europe, we have more than 1 million internally displaced people, refugees within Ukraine, and also people leaving the country because of the ongoing war. And indeed, I am ready to add my voice to all of those who call, please let go these people who are imprisoned, the sailors, the other people who are imprisoned, and we need to find a solution to this prolonged conflict, which is calcifying in the middle of our Europe. We have another one in Georgia. We need to really not only act, but sometimes even to speak, because even by speaking, we are holding our own while we are coming to the position when we can really propose real solutions.
Thank you, President Kaljulaid. Shana, go ahead, and then I have Satu afterwards.
Hi, my name is Shauna McGee from Kyoto News. We just learned from IPU that the number of women in top leadership has decreased, despite all the education and awareness that's going on, especially with all these wonderful women here today. Why do you think that is? What do you propose to change? And do you have a message for a country like Japan, which is a developed country, which moved in rankings from 107th to 171st, despite efforts by Shinzo Abe to push women in his policy? What advice would you have? What can be done?
Shana?
Thank you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, you.
Me?
Yes, please. Please, go ahead. You? Yes.
Thank you. It's nice to see ladies in power and President ladies. Congratulations.
Can you use your mic?
And no doubts that you're going to make a big difference. rape was used as a tool of war. And I come from former Yugoslavia, from Kosovo, where it was really used in a very, very massive. Over 20,000 women were raped in Kosovo as they were in Bosnia, but nobody was brought to the justice. As ladies and women in power, what can you do to facilitate bringing those responsible for that to justice?
Thank you. Yes?
I think this is a question to all of us, and frankly speaking, we are dealing with women in conflict also in Security Council, and I think we need to talk in more direct words and bring concrete examples, bring really people within these rooms and demonstrate. I think a lot of work has been done by those brave women who have got Nobel Prizes for exposing what has been going on with them. I mean, personal stories promoted by leaders, and this is something which we need to do to bring more attention. And indeed, of course, I support that the criminals should be found out and brought to court, and that the women issues and the children issues are not overlooked. I'm also the vice president of Every Woman, Every Child, a high-level working group, and these matters are really dear to my heart. So if I can work on promoting stories, I know they're horrible, but we need to face them. We tend not to want to hear horrible stories. We need to hear the horrible stories.
Thank you.
The question about going back in.
Well, I think the trouble about gender inequality is that we are all part of the gender system. And that's why, as early as 19th century, it was considered to be one of the most deep-rooted inequalities you could find. So that's why you can't take gender equality for a given. Even then when we have reached the 50-50, in the Icelandic parliament, we have a new election and it drops down. So it can't be taken, you know, it isn't a given. And I think that's why I mentioned radical measures here earlier, that sometimes what we have seen in Iceland, one example is the shared parental leave, that then we had to have the legislation first, and then we experienced the change of mentality. We couldn't wait for the culture to change by itself. We had to do it like a little bit top-down through women's solidarity. But now, nearly 20 years later, we are seeing a real change in mentality of men. So I think sometimes you have to do it through political policies because the culture won't change by itself.
I think we have time for 2 more questions very quickly. Carmen and then Shuhua.
Thank you so much. Carmen Maria Rodriguez of Radio Marti. I wanted to ask you, because we're speaking about equality, but we're also speaking about countries that are pretty advanced in their democracies already and making a space for women. In Cuba, for consecutive Sundays, the ladies in white try to go to their mass in Santa Rita Church, and every Sunday they are detained. And they're asking for political prisoners to be freed, and they're asking for freedom, civil rights freedoms in Cuba. Can you speak to us about this, given that they are really being brutalized and being harassed and arrested in Cuba every Sunday?
Thank you, Carmen. I'm going to get Xinhua, and then we will have to wrap up. Yes, go ahead.
Addressed to President Espinosa. And
microphone for the speaker, please.
Congratulations on your success in initiating the wonderful getting together of the Women in Power. And do you expect this event to become a permanent mechanism during CSW in the years to come? And secondly, you set gender equality as one of your 7 priorities. And can you give us an overall look as well as highlights of your work in this regard since you taking office? And any major plans in this regard for the rest of your presidency? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Very, very quickly, yes, indeed, is one of my 7 priorities. Everything I do is about ensuring gender parity, gender equality, and women and girls' rights. When speaking about decent work, when organizing a panel, in putting together my own cabinet, it has full parity, well, not full parity, 60% of female. When I appoint co-facilitators, 60% of the co-facilitators are female. We're really pushing the envelope to work together with the Secretary General, not to have only senior positions, parity in senior positions, but go a little bit down and look at at parity within the House, encouraging member states to appoint more women for higher positions. We have 45 female ambassadors. I interact with the gender champions in the House, with the group of Friends of Gender Parity. So every day I have something to do. And if I would like this to continue, of course I will. It depends on the incoming president, but also the openness and the commitment of the current chair of the CSW. In my opinion, if this can be done every year and call female presidents and prime ministers to speak up, to speak loud and sound on gender parity, that would be ideal. So if I can plant the seeds and then harvest and have a continuity, that would be, of course, great.
Thank you very much. Okay, the last question, then we have to go. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay.
If I could, just a word. That's why it's so important to guarantee the civil rights and human rights of everybody. The freedom to demonstrate is something which is absolutely necessary for the women to thrive in the society. Because even if we understand that societies could be conservative by themselves, unless women while demonstrating are protected and safe, these societies cannot change. Enlightened politicians don't change societies. Only freedom to demonstrate for all women so that they could show their support. So indeed, human rights and freedoms, they need to apply for everybody in all societies.
Thank you, President Kaljulaid. Okay, you have the last question.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thank you.
Majid Gili, Rudao Media Network. Thank you so much for this interesting discussion. I want to ask about women in the Muslim world, in the Arab world. As you know, they are especially culturally, legally, socially, on every standards you look at it, they are oppressed. One example is, I'm from Iraq. In Iraqi law, there's an article 398 where in the punishment law, in the criminal law, where the woman, the rapist, if marries the victim, then he's let go or the punishment decreased. So the law is actually encouraging the rapist to marry his victim. And you find examples like this all over, unfortunately, all over the Middle East. Why there hasn't been a special attention given to the issue of women in the Middle East?
Thank you.
And what do you suggest? What do you think the United Nations and international community should do about that?
Thank you very much.
Well, I think it's very unfortunate that all the women in power that are Muslim are not here among us, because most of them are speaking right now at the General Assembly, so they weren't able to be here. I think that they are the ones who would answer to that. But I heard before coming here, I heard Sheikh Al-Mayasa speak to that, and basically her message, and believe me, I don't want to take her words, I don't represent her at all, but I heard her saying, you know, when the issues of human dignity and fundamental rights are in play, this is what counts. And sometimes we misread and misinterpret religion just to use a tool to legitimize, to legitimize in a way forms of discrimination. And that's what I heard on that room. I am not entitled to speak on that, but what I would say is that the Universal Declaration for Human Rights and all the rights regarding human dignity and the fundamental rights of human beings should be above anything else.
Thank you very much. I would like to let you know that there will be an opportunity for a photo op. We will invite the Excellencies to have a picture with our banner over there, the family photo. But before, I would like, before I hand over to the President of the General Assembly, I would like to thank you very much, Her Excellency, Ms. Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, who left us a little bit earlier, President of Croatia, Her Excellency President of Estonia, Mrs. Kersti Kaljulaid, the President of the General Assembly, of course, Madam President María Fernanda Espinosa, the Prime Minister of Iceland, Her Excellency Ms. Katrín Jakobsdóttir, and the President of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency Ms. Paula-Mae. Madam President of the General Assembly, you have the floor.
Yes.
Okay, well, just to thank you all, to thank you for following this Women Empower journey, and I think you gave us, some of you gave a great idea. Let's hope that this would be picked up and be part of the tradition of CSW in the future. So thank you very much, and I'm really convinced that the voice of Women in Power today really shaped the United Nations, provided hope, guidance, and impetus to the younger generations. And we really are proving, that we can walk the talk and we can really make the difference while exercising power. So thank you very, very much. Thank you, Madam President and Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. And we'll have the picture now. Thank you.